When your wife waves back at you through a cafe window while sitting across from a stranger, you don't yet know it's the beginning of the end. I was riding my bicycle through Manhattan, weaving between cars stuck in another traffic jam. An envelope with important documents sat in my backpack, and I needed to deliver it in 20 minutes. A bicycle in New York isn't a whim, it's a necessity. While drivers nervously honk at each other, I simply ride around them, saving time and money on parking that's impossible to find anyway. That day I turned onto 6th Avenue and happened to glance into a small cafe window. There sat Lora, my wife. Across from her, a man in a black shirt, with whom she was talking animatedly. Without thinking, I tapped on the window and waved. Lora flinched but quickly smiled and waved back. The man didn't even turn around. I rode on, thinking it was probably another client or colleague. My wife is a wedding coordinator. She constantly meets with different people. Florists, confectioners, musicians. But something inside me ached. Maybe it was intuition or perhaps just fatigue after a long workday. My name is Patrick, I'm 31 and I've been married to Lora for 6 years. We met at a mutual friend's party, and back then it seemed like I'd met the person I'd spend my entire life with. She was bright, energetic, full of ideas. I'm a simple courier who delivers documents around the city. She's a creative soul who creates fairy tale weddings for other people. Our schedules almost never aligned. I'd leave early in the morning. She'd return late at night after another rehearsal or banquet. We lived in a rented apartment in Queens, nothing special, 2 rooms, an old kitchen, a view of the neighboring building. But it was enough for us. At least that's what I thought. That evening I came home earlier than usual. Lora was in the shower and I heard the water rushing behind the bathroom door. Her phone lay on the kitchen table, the screen glowing with a message. I'd never checked her phone before. Never. But that day something pushed me to pick it up. The conversation with a contact named Ruben opened immediately. I started scrolling up and with each line my heart pounded harder. Can't wait for Saturday. That rooftop view, the stars. Patrick suspects nothing. He's too busy with his deliveries. You're so much more interesting than him. He doesn't even understand what I want from life. That was the moment when I realized, there's no going back. I quickly put the phone back and went out onto the balcony trying to catch my breath. The shower water turned off. In a few minutes, Lora came out wrapped in a towel and smiled at me as if nothing had happened. "How was your day?" she asked. "Fine," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "Lots of orders." She nodded and went to get dressed. I stood there looking at her, understanding that the woman I'd known for 6 years had become a stranger to me. The following weeks I lived in 2 realities. During the day I was regular Patrick, a courier delivering envelopes and packages around New York. In the evening I became a detective gathering evidence of my wife's infidelity. I installed an app to track her phone through Telegram. She had no idea she'd shared her location with me a month ago when we were planning to meet downtown. I saw how she drove not to weddings but to neighborhoods where wealthy people live. I saw her car stop near trendy restaurants and bars. Several times I followed her on my bicycle. In New York this turned out to be surprisingly convenient. I could hide in traffic jams, ride around her car, stop in alleys and observe. Once I saw her exit some building in Chelsea, and that same man in the black shirt walked her to her car. He kissed her goodbye and she didn't pull away. The days blended into each other but I kept collecting evidence. I photographed their meetings, saved screenshots of their messages, tracked every location. I learned that they met at least twice a week, sometimes more. I discovered they had their favorite spots. A bar in the West Village, a restaurant in Soho, and that rooftop in Tribeca where they'd watch the sunset over the Hudson River. My deliveries became cover for my investigation. When I had a job near one of their meeting places, I'd arrive early and wait. The bicycle gave me perfect camouflage, just another courier in the endless stream of delivery workers that flood New York streets every day. Nobody pays attention to a guy on a bike with a backpack. I was invisible, and that invisibility became my greatest weapon. I started recognizing patterns in their behavior. Lora would text me she had a late wedding consultation, but I'd see her car parked outside Ruben's apartment building. She'd say she was meeting with a florist, but I'd watch her and Ruben walk hand in hand through Central Park. The lies piled up, each one adding to the weight crushing my chest. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than just evidence of infidelity. I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. Were there financial issues I didn't know about? Was she planning to leave me? Did she want to have his child? I read through months of their messages, piecing together the timeline. They'd met at the Morrison wedding, an elaborate affair at the Plaza Hotel. Lora was coordinating. Ruben was the photographer. According to their messages, they'd flirted during the reception, exchanged numbers afterward, and met for coffee the following week. That coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into something more. Within a month they were sleeping together. And the final twist of this story surprised even me. After a month, I had an entire folder of screenshots, photos, and records. I knew his name was Ruben, that he was an event photographer, and that they'd met at a wedding where Lora was the coordinator and he was shooting the ceremony. I knew they'd been seeing each other for almost a year. I even knew the address of that rooftop where they spent time under the stars. But what was I supposed to do with all this? We had no children together, no expensive property or large savings. The apartment was rented, the car was her personal vehicle, an old Honda she'd bought before we met. I could simply leave, divorce quietly without drama. But I wanted more. I wanted her to feel at least a fraction of the pain I was feeling. And then I remembered that Lora was very proud of her reputation. The wedding business in New York is a tight circle where everyone knows everyone. One scandal can destroy a career forever. I started planning. My job as a courier had taught me one valuable lesson: timing is everything. Deliver too early and the client isn't ready. Deliver too late and you failed. This revenge needed perfect timing. It was the calmest day before the storm. I learned that in 2 weeks, Lora would be coordinating a wedding for a very famous couple, the daughter of a restaurant chain owner and a successful entrepreneur. The event was to take place on the rooftop of one of Manhattan's most expensive hotels. And of course, Ruben was the photographer for this wedding. This was my opportunity. This wedding would have influential guests, prominent figures in New York's social scene, and most importantly, other wedding industry professionals who would be watching Lora's work closely. If she succeeded, it would elevate her career to new heights. If she failed or if scandal erupted, she'd be finished in this industry. I began to act. First, I created a fake social media account and compiled a list of all the guests who would attend the wedding. Then I made another account and wrote to several event planners in New York, presenting myself as a journalist writing an article about the most interesting workplace romances. I hinted that I had information about a coordinator and photographer who were dating during work events. This sparked a wave of rumors. People started discussing who exactly might be the heroes of this story. But I hadn't named names yet. I was building anticipation, letting the gossip spread naturally through the tight-knit wedding industry community. I wanted everyone to be curious, everyone to be watching. I spent hours crafting the perfect message. It couldn't be too aggressive. That would make me look vindictive and possibly hurt my credibility. It couldn't be too vague. People needed to understand the severity of what had happened. I wrote and rewrote it dozens of times, testing different versions, considering how each word would land. During this time, Lora had no idea what was coming. She went about her life as usual, splitting her time between me and Ruben. She'd come home and tell me about her day, leaving out the hours she spent with him. She'd kiss me goodnight and probably text him afterward. The duplicity was stunning once you saw it clearly. I found myself studying her in a new way, looking for signs I'd missed before. Had she always been this good at lying? Were there tells I should have noticed? But the truth was simpler and more painful. I'd trusted her completely, and that trust had blinded me to everything else. The wedding day arrived. Lora came home after the setup around 3 a.m, exhausted but happy. She told me how everything went perfectly, the flowers, the music, even the weather was beautiful. Ruben took incredible photos, she said, and in her voice I heard something more than just professional admiration. I nodded and smiled. Sounds wonderful. I let her enjoy her moment of triumph. Let her think everything was perfect, that she'd pulled off another successful event while maintaining her secret affair. Because what was coming next would be so much more devastating if she thought she'd gotten away with it. The next morning I launched my plan. I sent the evidence, screenshots of conversations, photos, details of their meetings, directly to the bride, the bride's parents, and several influential wedding planners in the city. I didn't write long explanations, just added, "Your coordinator and photographer were having an affair during the preparation and execution of your wedding. Perhaps you should know this." What happened after that is worth hearing. The bride's father, the restaurant owner, was furious. He'd paid enormous money for the organization, and now it turned out 2 key workers were occupied not with work but with their personal relationship. He started writing angry reviews, telling all his acquaintances. The agency where Lora worked received a barrage of calls. Ruben lost several major clients in one day. The scandal exploded across the wedding industry faster than I'd anticipated. Within hours, it was the talk of every planning group, every vendor network, every professional forum. Screenshots of my message were being shared and reshared. People were taking sides, expressing outrage, demanding accountability. Several other couples who had used Lora and Ruben's services started questioning whether their weddings had received full attention or whether the professionals they trusted were too busy with each other. Some demanded partial refunds. Others left scathing reviews online. The damage multiplied exponentially with each passing hour. And me? I just watched. Lora came home in tears. She'd been fired. The agency didn't want to deal with the scandal and decided to eliminate the problem. Ruben also lost his job at the studio where he shot weddings. Patrick, she said crying, I got fired. Someone spread lies about me and Ruben. It's not true. I looked at her and calmly said, it's not a lie, Lora. I know everything. She froze. Her face changed, from shock to fear then to anger. You spied on me? Yes, I replied. And I collected all the evidence. I sent it to people who had the right to know that their wedding team was occupied with something other than work. My reaction shocked even her friends. She started screaming, accusing me of ruining her life. But I remained calm. I'd already been through the pain, through the anger, through all the stages of grief. Now I just wanted to finish this. I'm filing for divorce, I said. We have no children, no shared property. It will be quick. She tried to convince me to give her another chance. Said she loved me, that Ruben was a mistake, that she didn't know what she was doing. But I wasn't listening. The irony? She herself told me how to expose her. If she hadn't left that phone on the table, if she hadn't written those messages, I might never have known. But there was more she didn't know. In my month of investigation, I discovered something else. Ruben wasn't just a photographer, he was a serial cheater. He'd had affairs with at least 2 other wedding coordinators before Lora. I found this out by digging through online forums and private Facebook groups where wedding vendors gossiped about each other. I'd considered telling Lora this information, showing her that she wasn't special to Ruben, that she was just another conquest in his pattern of workplace affairs. But I decided against it. Let her figure that out on her own. The betrayal would hurt more when it came from him rather than from me. The divorce proceeded quickly. The court divided our minimal savings in half. She took her car. I took my bicycle and personal belongings. We parted like 2 strangers who'd accidentally collided in a crowd. But the story didn't end there. I'd set something in motion that had consequences beyond what I'd initially planned. You won't guess how this all ends. Several weeks after our divorce was finalized, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Lora had tried to restart her career. She'd moved to New Jersey, hoping the scandal hadn't reached across the Hudson. She started taking small jobs, tiny weddings, birthday parties, corporate events. Nothing like the prestigious affairs she used to coordinate. Ruben had it worse. The photography community is even tighter than the wedding planning world, and professional photographers take ethics seriously. Major studios wouldn't hire him. Couples planning weddings had heard the stories and didn't want the drama. He tried freelancing, but without the network and connections, the work dried up quickly. Their relationship, unsurprisingly, fell apart within 2 months of the scandal. When I heard this news, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no joy. Just emptiness. Because revenge, I was learning, doesn't actually heal anything. It just creates a different kind of pain. I ran into Lora's mother at a grocery store in Queens about 3 months after everything ended. She looked at me with such sadness that I almost apologized, almost said I'd gone too far. But then she spoke first. You know, Patrick, she said quietly, I always liked you. I thought you were good for her. But what you did. She paused, shaking her head. What she did was wrong. What you did was worse. You both destroyed each other. Her words haunted me for weeks. Had I gone too far? In my quest for justice, had I become something I didn't want to be? I'd wanted Lora to feel consequences for her actions, but had I taken it to an extreme that said more about my own darkness than about her mistakes? I started seeing a therapist. Not because I felt guilty, not entirely, but because I needed to understand what had happened to me during those weeks of surveillance and planning. The therapist, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Chin, listened to my story without judgment. Betrayal changes us, she said during our 3rd session. Sometimes permanently. The question isn't whether your response was proportional. The question is, who do you want to be now? I thought about that a lot. Who did I want to be? I was still delivering packages on my bicycle, still weaving through Manhattan traffic, still living in a rented apartment. Externally, my life looked almost the same as before. But internally, everything had shifted. I'd learned that I was capable of cold, calculated revenge. I'd learned that I could hurt someone deliberately and feel justified in doing so. These weren't pleasant lessons, but they were real ones. They showed me capacities within myself that I hadn't known existed. About 5 months after the divorce, I received an unexpected message on Facebook. It was from Ruben. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," it read. "And I don't blame you. But I wanted you to know that what happened with Lora was my fault. I pursued her. I knew she was married. I didn't care. I've done this before and I probably would have done it again if everything hadn't blown up. What you did destroyed my career and honestly I deserved it. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not because I think it'll change anything, but because you deserve to hear it." I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to write back something cutting, something that would twist the knife deeper. But I didn't. I just deleted the message and blocked him. Some conversations aren't worth having. A few weeks later, I was making a delivery to a wedding planning agency in Brooklyn. As I walked in with my package, I overheard two coordinators talking. "Did you hear about that scandal with Lora Thompson last year?" One said. "Oh my God, yes," the other replied. "Apparently, her husband completely destroyed her career. Like, systematically. It was brutal. She cheated on him though, right? Yeah, but still. The way he did it? I don't know. Seems excessive." I left the package at the front desk and walked out without identifying myself. Hearing my actions discussed by strangers gave me a strange feeling. Not pride, not shame, just a hollow recognition that I'd become a story people told, a cautionary tale about revenge going too far. That night I thought about reaching out to Lora. Not to apologize, not to reconcile, but just to see how she was doing. To confirm that she was surviving, that I hadn't completely destroyed her. But I didn't. Because what would be the point? We'd both moved on in our own damaged ways. Life continued. I kept delivering packages. The seasons changed. Summer heat gave way to fall crispness, then winter cold. I dated a few people, but nothing serious. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'd never be ready again. Trust, once shattered completely, might be impossible to rebuild. She smiled. And then I realized everything had been planned. Now wait. This wasn't about her. This was about me. I'd planned every step, every message, every action. And when it was all over, I understood that I was stronger than I thought. That I could control my life, not just deliver envelopes. A year after everything ended, I took a different job. I was tired of being a courier, tired of the constant motion without destination. I started working for a small tech startup that needed someone to manage their logistics. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and it gave me time to think about what I actually wanted from life. I moved to a better apartment, this time in Brooklyn. I adopted a dog, a rescue terrier named Max who'd been abandoned by his previous owner. Taking care of him reminded me that not all relationships end in betrayal, that some beings just need love and give it back unconditionally. On the anniversary of the day I'd discovered Lora's affair, I rode my bicycle to that cafe where I'd first seen them together. It looked different in daylight, less ominous, just another New York establishment serving overpriced coffee to hurried customers. I went inside and ordered a coffee. Sat at a table by the window. Watched people pass by on the street, all of them carrying their own secrets, their own betrayals, their own revenges. Some of those stories would end badly. Some would end in forgiveness. Some, like mine, would just end. I thought about what Lora's mother had said, that we destroyed each other. She was right in a way, but also wrong. Destruction implies finality, and neither of us was destroyed. We were changed, damaged, reconfigured into different versions of ourselves. Whether those versions were better or worse remained to be seen. You can't undo betrayal. You can't unmake the choices that led to it. All you can do is decide how to move forward, knowing what you now know about yourself and others. Some people choose forgiveness. Some choose revenge. I chose something in between, accountability without mercy, justice without healing. Was it the right choice? I still don't know. But it was my choice, made with full knowledge of the consequences. And in a life where so much happens to us without our control, maybe that's enough. Now, riding past that cafe where I first saw them together, I no longer feel pain. Only calm. And the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge is letting someone lose everything they considered important. But also the knowledge that revenge has its own price, paid in pieces of ourselves we can never get back. The months that followed were a strange mixture of liberation and regret. I threw myself into my new job at the tech startup, managing logistics and delivery routes for their rapidly growing business. It was ironic, really. I'd gone from being the guy on the bicycle to being the one who coordinated hundreds of guys on bicycles. My apartment in Brooklyn became my sanctuary. Max, my rescue terrier, turned out to be exactly what I needed, something living that depended on me, that greeted me with pure joy every time I walked through the door. No agenda, no lies. Dogs don't cheat. Dogs don't betray. They just love, simply and completely. But at night, when the city quieted down and Max was asleep at the foot of my bed, the thoughts would come. I'd replay everything in my mind, not just Lora's betrayal but my response to it. Had I been justified? Had I been cruel? The line between justice and vengeance seemed clear when I was angry, but now, in the calm aftermath, it blurred. I started following the wedding industry news, unable to help myself. I saw that the agency where Lora had worked was thriving, having distanced themselves from the scandal quickly and effectively. They'd hired a new coordinator, a young woman fresh out of hospitality school, eager and untainted by controversy. Life went on for everyone except the two people at the center of the storm. One evening about 8 months after everything ended, I was walking Max through Prospect Park when I saw her. Lora. She was sitting on a bench, staring at her phone, looking thinner than I remembered, older somehow. She hadn't seen me yet, and I had a moment to decide: walk past her, approach her, or turn around and leave. I chose to approach. "Lora," I said quietly. She looked up, and for a second, pure fear crossed her face. Then it settled into resignation. "Patrick," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Max sniffed her shoes curiously, tail wagging. She reached down automatically to pet him, then seemed to catch herself, pulling her hand back. "It's okay," I said. "He's friendly." She petted Max and I saw tears forming in her eyes. "I'm working at a small event planning company in Jersey now," she said, unprompted. "Kids' birthday parties mostly. Bar mitzvahs. Nothing like before." "I heard things didn't work out with Ruben," I said, not knowing why I was prolonging this conversation. She laughed bitterly. "He moved to Los Angeles. Last I heard, he's working at an electronics store. Turns out his photography career was pretty much finished on the East Coast." We sat in silence for a moment, Max settling between us. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am. I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt you in ways I can't ever fix." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone broken by consequences. Not destroyed as her mother had said, but definitely broken. And I'd been the one holding the hammer. "I'm sorry too," I said, surprising myself. "Not for exposing the affair. You deserved consequences for that. But for the way I did it. For making sure it destroyed everything, not just us." She wiped her eyes. "You know what the worst part is? I did love you. I do love you. Ruben was just excitement. An escape. A stupid, selfish escape from a life that felt too ordinary. And now ordinary is all I wish I could have back." "We can't go back," I said. "You know that, right?" "I know," she nodded. "I'm not asking for that. I needed you to know that it wasn't because you weren't enough. You were always enough. I was the problem." Max barked, wanting to continue his walk. I stood up and Lora stood too. "Take care of yourself, Lora," I said. "You too, Patrick. I hope you find happiness. Real happiness. You deserve it." I walked away, Max trotting beside me, and I didn't look back. That conversation hadn't brought closure. I'm not sure closure is even a real thing. But it had brought something, understanding maybe. The knowledge that people are complicated, that betrayal can coexist with love, that revenge can be both justified and excessive at the same time. Over the next few months I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, coffee dates, dinners, movies. I met Sarah, a teacher from the Bronx, through a friend. She was kind, funny, straightforward in ways that Lora had never been. Our third date, I told her everything, about Lora, about Ruben, about the revenge. "That's intense," Sarah said, not judging, just processing. "Do you regret it?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "Other times no. Mostly I just wish none of it had happened." "That's honest," she said. "I appreciate honest." Sarah and I dated for 6 months before it ended amicably. We wanted different things. She wanted marriage and kids soon. I wasn't sure I'd ever want either again. But she taught me that I could trust again, at least partially. That not everyone would betray me. That relationships could end without destruction. I ran into Lora's mother again, this time at a farmer's market in Union Square. She was buying vegetables and I almost walked past without saying anything. But she saw me first. "Patrick," she said, her tone warmer than last time. "How are you?" "I'm okay," I said. "How's Lora?" "She's rebuilding," her mother said. "Slowly. She's actually seeing someone new. A teacher. He seems nice. Normal." I felt a strange pang at that news, not jealousy exactly, but something close to it. The knowledge that she was moving on, finding happiness despite everything, while I was still somewhat stuck. That's good, I said, meaning it. I'm glad she's doing better. She tells me you two talked in the park a while back, her mother said. She said it helped her. Gave her some peace. It helped me too, I admitted. Her mother smiled sadly. You were good together, you know. In the beginning. Before everything got complicated. Yeah, I said. We were. I continued going to therapy, working through not just the betrayal but my response to it. Dr. Chin helped me see that my revenge, while understandable, had come from a place of deep hurt and anger that I hadn't properly processed. That I tried to make Lora feel what I felt by destroying what she valued most, the same way she destroyed what I valued most. Our marriage, our trust, our future together. The problem with revenge, Dr. Chin said during one session, is that it's based on the assumption that making someone else suffer will make your suffering less. But pain doesn't work that way. It just multiplies. She was right. My revenge hadn't made me feel better, not really. It had given me a temporary sense of control, of power, but underneath that was still the same hurt, the same betrayal, the same loss. 2 years after discovering Lora's affair, I was in a different place entirely. I'd been promoted at work, moved to a nicer apartment, was dating someone new, Lisa, a graphic designer who'd also been through a difficult divorce. We understood each other's damage, respected each other's boundaries, took things slow. One day, scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw that Ruben had posted about starting a new photography business in California. The post was optimistic, talking about second chances and learning from mistakes. I felt nothing looking at it, no anger, no satisfaction, just indifference. He was a chapter closed, a person who'd briefly intersected with my life and then disappeared. I also saw that Lora had updated her profile. She was working at a boutique event planning firm in Westchester, specializing in intimate gatherings and small weddings. The description emphasized personal attention, authenticity, and trust, words that probably meant something different to her now than they had before. Good for her, I thought. And I meant it. Looking back on everything, I couldn't say whether what I did was right or wrong. Morality isn't that simple. Lora betrayed me, lied to me, carried on an affair while pretending our marriage was fine. That was wrong, clearly. But I'd taken her mistake and weaponized it, used it to systematically destroy her career and reputation. Was that justice? Was that revenge? Was there even a difference? What I learned from all of it was this: betrayal changes everyone it touches. It changed Lora into someone who lost everything and had to rebuild from scratch. It changed Ruben from a successful photographer into a cautionary tale. And it changed me from someone who trusted easily into someone who always kept one eye open, always watching for signs of deception. Some changes are permanent. Some scars don't fade. But life continues regardless, pulling us forward whether we're ready or not. And sometimes, the best we can do is survive our own worst moments and hope we become something better on the other side. Now, when I ride my bicycle through the city, not for deliveries anymore, just for exercise and peace, I sometimes pass that cafe where I first saw them together. And each time I feel a little less than I did before. Less anger, less pain, less regret. One day maybe I'll feel nothing at all. And on that day I'll finally be free.